Hello, my name is Nordic HammerJ. In today's video, I'm going to show you how you can build your very own Viking styled shield. Now, I say Viking style because, disclaimer, this shield is not going to be 100% historically accurate, because I plan on using things like half-inch thick plywood and some other materials and techniques that you'll see throughout this video. So if you're okay with getting a Viking styled shield, this is a video for you. If you want something that is 100% historically accurate, I'll give you a second to click off this video. Still here? Okay, cool. So, first thing you want to do is try to figure out exactly how big of a shield you want to have. Now, I highly recommend you getting yourself like a piece of cardboard and tracing out your template for your shield because, you know, only you can measure twice and cut once. And it's a lot easier for you to adjust the size of your shield through cardboard than it is for you to have to, like, you know, cut off more of a shield or try to somehow stretch out your plywood or add more planks. So save yourself the headache and get yourself a piece of cardboard because it'll be a lot easier. Now, historically speaking, Viking shields were anywhere from like 28 inches up to 36 inches, but the size of the shield themselves kind of varied from shield to shield based off of the person who's going to be the owner or the user of that shield and the exact situation that shield is going to be used in. So I already have a 35-inch shield that I made a couple years ago, and I like it. Fenrir is a great shield. It was my first shield that I made for myself, and I think it's great. But at a Renaissance festival or in a big area surrounded by a lot of people, he's kind of going to be in the way. So no offense, Fenrir. Gonna go with something else. Sorry, bud. This shield I'm going to make today is going to be around 28, maybe 29 inches because it's going to be a lot more crowd friendly. So now that you have your size in mind, go ahead and trace it out on your template for your cardboard. Make sure it works and we'll go from there. As you can see, I have a yardstick that I have measured and cut out to the size that I need. So now I'm going to figure out the size, and I said I'm going to go with a 28-inch shield. I'm going to put a nail in there so I can measure it out. I'm going to put a pen into where's my hole, 13 and a half. So, perfect shield. Once you figure out how big of a shield you want to have, go ahead and use your template to trace onto your plywood or your wooden planks and get your shield cut out of your lumber. I think using a jigsaw would probably be the easiest way to cut out of it, but feel free to use whatever tools you have or whatever makes you feel most comfortable. So let's get this cut out and we'll move on to the next step. After the shield's all measured out, now's a good time to make sure that you measure out and trace where the hole is going to be needed for your handle. Since the yardstick's still attached, now's a good time to still do that. I found that it was easy to cut the shield by pivoting the entire thing on a small object like a milk crate, and then for the hole for the handle, I drilled a hole with a regular drill bit, used it as my starting point, and then cut the hole from there. Okay. Now that I have our shield cut out and sanded down a little bit to kind of help get rid of any of the splinters that might be happening, we can move on to the fun designing stage. Historically speaking, Viking shields had a piece of linen that was glued over their planks to help reinforce them. They would later then paint that linen to give their designs, like so. Now, I will not be using that technique because I feel like I'm a better woodworker than a painter, so I'll be doing something different. How I design my shields, I use wood burning and wood stain to design them. Again, not completely historically accurate, but for something that's supposed to represent yourself, you know, the user and owner of the shield, I feel like this better showcases and represents myself than paint on linen. So, again, a little different, but still comes across very clearly as a Viking style shield. Now, first thing you want to do to give the appearance that your piece of plywood is wooden planks is to make lines across your piece of plywood to still show that it looks like a wooden plank, a bunch of wooden planks together. By doing that, I use a pen and a measuring stick to draw my lines. Make sure that when you do draw your lines, that your lines are going with the wood grain, not against the wood grain. because, that's how wood works. You don't want the two different lines going across each other. So get that measured out and get those lines drawn, and we'll move on to our actual designing step. So I'm making my wooden planks about 3.5 inches wide, but feel free to make them larger or smaller depending on how big your shield is, your specific style, or just what you think looks pretty good. On this shield, I thought 3.5 was a good size. Also, some tips: make sure that when you start wood burning that you are not sitting directly below a smoke detector or it will go off, trust me. And when you make your lines, that on both the front and back, that they meet up so they look more realistic. After you get your wooden plank lines burnt onto your shield, you can start with your design. As you can see, I've already traced out where the metal boss is going to be on our shield to save some time and prevent a little bit of a headache. Because, nothing's more upsetting than having a design that you worked hard on that you can't really see. So, little pro tip. As far as what exactly you should do for your design for your shield, it's really up to you and your own opinion. There's a lot of talk and debate right now about what exactly a Viking shield looked like. Some believe that they're very intricate and detailed in design, while others thought that they're more simple in nature. So, realistically, it's what you want to do, because there's not really a lot of these shields around these days, because they're made out of, wood, linen, and rawhide to prove that one's right and one's wrong. So, do whatever you think will look best. As far as myself and this shield, it did take me a little bit of time to figure out what exactly I wanted to do. I spent some time looking on the internet, watching other YouTube videos, just anything I could really do to try to get some inspiration for this shield. And it wasn't until after talking to a fellow Nordic brother that I got an idea. He said, and I quote, "Designs can be made up of many things: one's tribe, inscriptions of the gods, ruins, and saga stories. No right, no wrong. Shields are made from the heart." And I don't know what exactly about that an idea came to mind, but it did. So, what are shields made for? Protection. When you think of symbols in Norse culture of protection, what come to mind? Usually, most people say the Helm of Awe, which I know, historically speaking, is not going to be Viking, because the Helm of Awe wasn't really invented, per se, until the 1600s. But, as far as a modern version of a Viking-style shield, I think that's going to look pretty good. Also, I am one that really enjoys having things be symmetrical, so having the Helm of Awe looks pretty good on this shield, or at least I think it will. Also, while I was looking through the internet for ideas, there was another idea, or design I should say, that I think would look really good with the Helm of Awe. So, again, being someone that enjoys things being very symmetrical, I took the time to trace out and cut out my idea, or my pattern I should say, onto some cardboard that I can use and move, so everything was going to be, for the most part, exactly the same throughout the entire shield. That, and with another detail, or design part, it's going to look something like this. Well, you'll see in a second actually. So let me get all my template pieces traced out with a pencil. We're going to come back and use a wood burning tool so you can see what the entire thing's going to look like. Be right back. Now it's time to apply the stain. For this shield, I'll be using 3 different colors: dark walnut, provincial, and worn navy. Kind of an odd mixture, but with the outfit I will be wearing while carrying this shield, I think it'll tie it all together pretty nicely. Personally, I like using foam brushes to apply a stain because it soaks up pretty well and can get really fine detail with a foam brush point. So let's get to it. All colors of stain were applied with 2 coats to make sure that the color would be nice and rich. I made a cardstock template that will show me where all the holes are going to be necessary to sew on the rawhide edging for the shield. On the shield side of the template, the holes are going to be about a 1/2 inch apart and a 1/2 inch away from the curvature of the shield's edge itself. To make the sewing part easier, I use a 5/32 drill bit to make the holes. Next, glue a 1/2 inch thick manila rope on the edge of the shield. The rope would help prevent the shrinking rawhide from tearing as it dried, and would also help fortify the edge of the shield from the occasional axe swing or sword. Up next, we'll be using rawhides to get the shield's rawhide edge. First, you gotta soak them. After about 5 or 6 hours, they were flexible enough to use. After soaking, let the rawhides dry off a little bit and then mark them into 4-inch wide strips. With the help of leather scissors, cut these strips into the size and length that you need them to be. From there, you can start the fun process of punching all the holes you need, based off of that guide we used earlier, into the holes and placement needed to sew on the leather strips. Now you can either leave the rawhides white, or if you want, you can dye them. Now instead of using a fabric dye like Ritz, I discovered that using wood stain works really well. Just like the stain on the shield, I did 2 coats, but for the rawhides, allow the stain to soak for a good day in between applying the first and second coat. This allows the stain to really soak deep into the rawhide itself, and just gives you a really good lasting color that lasts. Sorry about the video quality, didn't realize it got blurry. Okay, so sewing on the rawhide edge is probably more difficult to explain than it actually is to sew on the rawhide edge. So basically, you're going to have a long piece of string with a needle on both ends. You're going to start from the wood side of the shield, going outward, and you're going to sew through the outer end hole on the rawhide, which will be folded underneath, continue through the middle of the 2 holes on the rawhide edge, pull your string nice and tight, go to the next hole, start going into the inside hole on the rawhide edge, continue through the outer side hole on the rawhide edge, continue through the wood, and the next hole in the wooden shield, and then just mirror the same thing on the other side. So start from the outer side hole, go through the inside hole, poke out from the outside, loop around, go from the inside hole to the outside hole to the next. To sew on your attaching pieces, cut off 2 hole notches on each of the conjoining pieces, just to make it easier, and continue the same method as you have going before. So out from the hole, through the underside on the outer side hole, continue through the outside hole, loop to the next piece, and continue your sewing process. Hopefully this makes sense. Use a drill to make the holes so you can attach your boss and your handle to your shield. Depending on the boss you're using will decide how big the holes you need to use. For my case, I'm using 1/4 inch for a drill bit. Once you get your rivets through, use a ball peen hammer to mushroom out the top of the rivet and then flatten them down with the normal size of the hammer. Make sure that the rivets are resting on something hard so you have resistance so you can beat the rivet into shape. And just like that, you have yourself your very own Viking style shield. Overall, I'm pretty happy with how it turned out, but I'm even happier with how it is in the hand. I'd say it's pretty comfortable. It's probably only around 10 pounds, give or take, but I'll put the actual weight up there just to kind of give you the idea of what to expect while carrying around a shield like this. Now, if your hands do get tired, or if you just want your hands to be free because you're at a fair and you want to look at stuff or eat food or stuff like that, I would highly recommend putting a strap on the back, because once you get that backpack and all buckled in, it's not that bad. I think I had it on my back for about 5 or 6 hours when I was at a fair during this year, and I wasn't any less uncomfortable than when I first put it on. Not saying that I was uncomfortable, but you know what I mean. Now, the only other thing I'll probably do to the shield is put on a clear coat, like waterproofer, because, you know, if you're out in the rain or you're out pillaging some lakefront town, you really don't want your stain or your design or your rawhide to go bad, because once you put a lot of time into something, and I do mean a lot of time into something, you don't want your efforts to go to waste. But even with a clear coat, it's still going to look the same, so good enough for the video still. And besides that, I think, just like the shield, this video is pretty much over. So if you like what you saw, give me a thumbs up down below. If you have any comments or questions about the shield, also put those in the comment section down below. Or if you want to tell me how you would design or do your shield, throw that down there too. If you want to see more videos in the future, maybe hit that subscribe button, because, you know, there's going to be more videos in the future. And just like that, I think I'm pretty much done here. So, until next time, I'll see you then. Bye.